there's a great many. You spoke of the word oneer, so that's a shot that doesn't cut from beginning to end of scene. There's no coverage. There's no close-ups. It's all one. And often this would happen 8 to 10 pages, which is a very long time for no cut, which means it was choreographed and rehearsed like a play. And Amy Sherman Palladino, the creator of the show and our ringleader of this particular circus, she found a love and then devotion to the oneer. So throughout the seasons and series, they continue to evolve to the point where, as a viewer, you may not even be aware that there's been no cut for the last 7 minutes. And it's a very unusual aspect of the show.
Hard on the actors, I'm guessing.
Well, for the other actors who have a ton of theater experience, not as hard at all. To this stand-up comedian with no formal training as an actor, just a fairly impressive body of work, but no training. It was very intimidating and something I had to learn very, very quickly. None of us just wanted to make sure we weren't the one who spoiled the take, right? So you've got 14 moving parts in this 8-minute scene, and you just don't want to be the reason. Back to ones, we would take turns doing it, of course, but ultimately no one wanted to be the reason.
An exhausted Steadicam operator, I'm sure.
Jim McConkey, who's, remind me of someone's comment about Ginger Rogers doing everything Fred Astaire did, but backwards and in heels. I don't remember Jim being in heels often, but he really was one of the most impressive Steadicam operators I've worked
So
with.
paint the picture. He's wearing it around his shoulders and waist and walking backwards, or is there a track?
And no, there's no track. There's him. There's a person behind him as a sort of helping guide. But when we rehearse, he is doing everything we're doing, but he's going backwards, yes. And swiveling side to side, sometimes letting us pass him, and then he trails us. There's so many pieces to these oneers. And David Mullen, the cinematographer, at the forefront of these choreographed, and also writing at a pace of dialogue that no one is accustomed to until you get into their universe. You're talking faster than humanly. I don't want to say possible, but suggested.
Advised.
It's all ill-advised.
Yeah.
And Rachel Brosnahan, the lead, the very titular character of Mrs. Maisel, on our 80-page scripts, often she would be talking faster than humanly suggested on 74 of them. And so she really did have the bulk of the ridiculous workload.
And often in heels.
98.7% of the time.
Yeah.
There was a rumor when the show first caught fire that this was loosely based on Joan Rivers. Is that true or no?
It was not based on Joan. There were elements of Joan's life. There are elements of other performers' lives also. Amy Sherman grew up with a stand-up comedian father, Don Sherman, from the 50s and 60s. And into the decades thereafter. And so she knew that world and wanted to create a fictitious woman to be our central character, to, deal with family issues, deal with a woman trying to make it on her own terms, first thrust into it by a sudden divorce, a husband walking out. But then really taking on this career that wasn't a viable option for women in 1958, I think, when the story starts. And there were a few, but this show does not follow any of their stories. It's fictionalized, some of which based on actual living people. And there's a Lenny Bruce character, of course, Luke Kirby, the brilliant actor, 2-time Emmy winner himself. For my money, the best Lenny Bruce interpretation that has ever been.
Wow.
Not even close.
He's brilliant, yeah.
You answered one of my other questions with Amy having a father who was a stand-up, so she knew the rhythm, she knew from whence the material came. And Up until Mrs. Maisel and up until Hacks, I had never really liked shows about stand-up. I thought they were too transparent, and I was too critical of them because they just weren't convincing to me. But your show, not only the stage stuff, but getting ready for it and being thrust into that world, having no experience, and Hacks, which is hysterical. The writing on that is funny. I'm a fan of those shows. If they treat it well, I respect them.
Yeah. Yes. It's something that stand-up comedian friends of mine, I was very interested in hearing what they all thought. And for the most part, everyone, begrudgingly or otherwise, agreed that, the show hits on so many of the real life decisions, among other things, aspects regarding a stand-up comedian's life.
Were you the only actor, regular actor, who actually is a comedian?
The only series regular, yes. In fact, our lead, again, Rachel Brosnahan, not only had not done much or any comedy, is not a terribly funny person, and she'd be the first to tell you that. And she was certainly the first to tell us. And it speaks to her brilliance as a dramatic actress, because there is so much drama on the show, but her ability to learn comedic rhythms, they are rather musical and lyrical, during those monologues, by working very closely with Amy Sherman and Dan on the pace and how not to play the funny, how not to play the punchlines, how not to play the joke, how to play the reality of someone having to deliver on stage. And many times her monologues were seemingly, or by design, stream of conscious for the character. She had to learn how to write and tell jokes.